Thank God, much better. Much better, thank you.
Good.
Right, welcome back to Sanhedrin. We're on page 21a towards the bottom, page 123 if you're in the Steinsaltz, Chaf Aleph Amud Aleph if you're in the Art Scroll or the Vilna Shas. And we were discussing the fact that Rav Yehuda said in the name of Rav that King David had 400 children. And we thought that was rather a lot for one bloke to sire 400 children. And one suggestion was that they weren't all sired by King David, but they were sired by his army. And if we go to the Gemarah, let me share the screen with you. We go to the top of the page here.
Doesn't it say somewhere, and I can't remember where I read it, that David had an elite military corps of 400?
He started off with 200, if you remember, back in Shmuel Aleph. And then he ended up actually with 600. But yes, 400 is mentioned along the way. So that would be, if each one of them had one beautiful captive woman, then that would work. We figured last week or last time that for the soldiers between them, for the army between them to sire 400 children would be reasonable. And these were, let's have a look at the top of the page there in the Steinsaltz here. It's on the screen for you. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav. Rav Yehuda in the name of Rav says, Arba meyot yeladim ayula lo David. 400 children David had. V'kulan b'nei yefat to'ar hayu. They were all the children of the beautiful captive woman. And if you remember last time, we went through the psukim very carefully of what a soldier has to do if he captures a beautiful woman and he wants to marry her. It's the beginning of Parashat Ki Teitzei, and we went through in it. If you remember, he has to take her into the house. She has to be there for a month. She has to uncover her hair and not cut her nails, and she has to mourn for her parents for a month. And then, if he still wants her, then he can have her, he can marry her. But then there are certain restrictions. He can't get rid of her, can't sell her as a slave. And we spoke about that in some detail last time. So where we ended off last time was these three words here, which I gave you a taster of last time. They were all the Chulan b'nei Yefat To'ah hayu. They were all the children of these beautiful women captives. Umegadlei bloriot hayu. And they grew their hair as bloriot. Bloriot. There is a picture of a person with long hair over here on the right-hand side. Steinsaltz translates bloriot as a Gentile hairstyle. Not gentle, but Gentile hairstyle. Okay. And there is a picture of a Greek person with long hair. Now, the Greeks were sometime before the time of the Gemarah. The Greek period, the Greco-Roman period, began at the towards the end of Beit Sheni. So 150, 200 years before the Common Era. The Gemarah was written when?
200. Oh no,
900.
500. Yeah, Mishnah was 200. Mishnah 200, Gemarah 500. So 700 years later. So these people had their hair in a Gentile hairstyle. Okay, now let's see what Rav Steinsaltz says about this. Based on descriptions by the sages, this was a hairstyle where the hair was grown mostly on the back and sides of the head, serving a decorative purpose, but also somewhat connected to a pagan ritual. For this reason, Jews generally did not grow their hair in this manner, unless they were soldiers or needed to live among the Gentiles. Now then, I had a Rebbe once, back in the day, called Rebbe Volkin, and Johnny also had the same Rebbe. What did Rebbe Volkin say, Johnny, about having Goyish habits?
I would say he said it was trafe.
Yeah, he said it was trafe. He used to say, you mustn't ape the Goyim. Remember that?
Yeah.
You mustn't ape the Goyim.
Yes,
Now,
trafe.
one of the ways to ape the Goyim is to wear their fashionable clothes and to wear your hair in the fashionable manner of the Goyim. So this didn't really apply too much in the 20th century until the 60s, because until the 60s, everybody wore short back and sides. It's very fascinating if you look through the some of the early videos of the Beatles. The early videos of the Beatles in the early 60s, 62, 63, when they first started coming, they had short hair, they had shirt and tie, and they looked, they looked like mention. And then a few years later, they had long hair, and it became known as a Beatle cut.
No,
Right.
I think you're wrong. The Beatle cut was that they had Beatle suits, which were collarless, and the Beatle hairstyle, which was the short one.
Sure,
When they went longer, they did their own thing.
Sorry, am I getting that wrong? If you look at the early videos of the Beatles, they had short hair and they wore
but they were
collar and tie.
styled. They were styled. They had fringes and the style.
Oh, I
and
see.
They
Okay,
also had Beatle suits, which I know that because Roger had one as well. I mean, people emulated them.
Right. Okay. Well, they emulated them. That's the point. And when they started to have long hair, people emulated them.
It was other people. It was general.
Yeah. Okay. Well, everybody had long hair, right?
Yeah.
In the late 60s and 70s, I had my bar mitzvah in the early 70s. 72, I had my bar mitzvah, and I have long blonde hair, which was meant to be curly, which was curly, but we'd spent like hours and hours straightening it so that it was long and not like an afro. And I look like a right idiot on the pictures, but it's long. You can't see my ears, right? And I'm sure that we all know exactly what we're talking about here. That was aping the Goyim. The Frum kids didn't do that. The Frum kids had Frum haircuts. What were the Frum haircuts? Short on the top, short at the back, and leave the payers long. Okay? So there is a basis to it, and the basis to it is here in the Gemarah, that Megadlei Beluriot Hoyu, they grew their hair in the Gentile hairstyle, which is not allowed. And in fact, if you look, I'm going to show you the Rambam now. There we go. I'm going to show you the Rambam in Hilchot Avodat Kochavim, the Mishnah Torah. It says here, Ein holchin bechukot ha'ovdei kochavim. Chukat agoy, you've heard of that, yeah? Chukat agoy. Don't go walk in the statutes of the goyim. Where do we hear that from? It's not from the Rambam. It's not from the Gemarah. Where is it from?
Not from the Rambam, not from the Gemarah.
Tanakh.
You're very good. Whereabouts in Tanakh? Have a look at the screen where my pointer is.
When you're going into Israel, don't copy the Canaanites.
Yeah, but warnings, a warning before they went into Israel in the Torah itself. In Sefer Vayikra, There we go. That's it. Absolutely. There it is on the screen for you. The Rambam quotes it. V'lo telchu b'chukot hagoy. Do not walk in the statutes of the goyim. Meaning, don't follow their trends. Don't follow their fashions. Don't follow the things that they do. Because remember, back in the day, and I suppose you could argue that it applies today as well in a slightly different way. Back in the day, all the fashions that they had, all the different customs that they had were all related to their idol worship. They were all related to their religion in the same way as many of our customs that we do are related to our religion. Why do we have payers? Because it says so. Don't cut the corners of your beard or the corners of your face, right? We don't know where the corners are, so we have to keep payers, right? The Goyim's fashions were mainly related to their Avodah Zarah. And so the Torah tells us, don't do that. Don't copy them. And our Rebbe used to say, don't ape the Goyim. That was the more modern way of saying, lo telchu b'chukot hagoy.
Isn't it the other way around? So I'm thinking of the Greek gods, that they would be dressed with, commensurate with the way that the Greeks dressed themselves. That's how they envisaged their gods.
Well,
or
I
without
it's the same thing, isn't it?
Clothes. Well, no, it's the
chicken. It's a chicken and egg, isn't it? Yeah. They dressed up their gods in the way they think their gods would have been dressed.
Yes.
Our God doesn't have a dress because he or she has no body and no dumut haguf and no is extra corporeal. So by the way, one of the interesting things that I learned from my father, I learned many things from my father, but one of the interesting things I learned from my father is this is the source for the Hasidim buttoning their jackets up
the other way around.
The other way around, okay? In modern Western society, men have the left over right. When you button your shirt as a man, or you button your jacket, left over right. A Hasidische Bekischer buttons right over left.
Isn't that a problem? Because then he's looking like a female.
Yes, it is a problem, Michael. You're quite right.
What about unisex?
Okay, yes. Okay, well,
but not for them, Mike. It's not a problem for them.
we'll come to unisex in a minute, but the right over left, and one of my father had all sorts of nicknames for all sorts of people, and one of the nicknames he had for the Hasidim were the right over left boys, and that was because they buttoned their coats up right over left, which of course, as Michael quite rightly says, is the women's side. It's not really a problem because basically, Michael, women don't wear bekishas.
Wait a second. Yeah, I'm getting a little bit upset here. Darian, excuse me. The right over left is so that your chesed should always dominate over your din. Yeah, and therefore you put the chesed on top because it should always dominate over the din. And the Hasidim do everything according to their philosophy of life, which comes in large from sections of the Kabbalah. And I know that that's out of your comfort zone, but they have deeper reasons for doing some of the things that they do. That's all.
Very nice. That's the first time I've ever heard that. That's why they put their jackets right over left. It's what happens with a lot of things, that the right always represents chesed and the left always represents din. It's why you put tefillin on your left hand, on your left arm, so as to bind the dinim, and
a lot of things come out of that into ordinary everyday life.
Well, I
And
put mine on the right side, on the right hand.
if you're a Cohen,
I'm not
No,
a.
if you're left-handed.
Left-handed.
if you're left-handed, I'm talking in general. To every rule is an exception, but in general.
Okay. That's a fascinating explanation, Hannah. I admit I have never heard that explanation about why they button their coats up right over left. Sadly, my father is no longer with us, and I can't ask him if he ever heard that. But I will make some further inquiries, and I'll ask a few Hasidim who I know. That's a fascinating answer, and we'll see. Anyway. Lo telchu b'chukot hagoy means don't copy their fashions. So one of the things that we do not copy is their haircuts. And if you go further down in this Rambam, you will see the word that we saw in the Gemarah. Have a look over here. Have a look where my pointer is. Can you see my pointer over here on the screen? Yeah. Velo yigadel tzitzit rosho. You should not grow tzitzit rosho. What are tzitzit?
Fringes.
Fringes. Yeah, fringes. I think Julia used that word just a minute ago with regard to haircuts. We talk about a fringe, don't we? I don't know what it's called in. I learned the word for fringe in Hebrew the other day. My granddaughter taught it to me, but I've forgotten it. Hannah, what's a word for a fringe in Hebrew?
It's a pony, I think. They call them ponies, which is what we call ponytails.
Okay, so anyway, I'll have to ask my granddaughter that one.
You're talking about a fringe in the front?
Yeah.
A pony.
Pony, okay, yeah. So you're right. Well done, Julia. Okay, so anyway, tzitzit here means fringes, not the fringe at the front, not the pony. But what are fringes? What are the tzitzit? Tzitzit are the things that hang down, right? So tzitzit rosho means long locks. Yeah, long locks. So don't grow the locks of your head or his head. A person should not grow their locks of his head. Kamo tzitzit rosham. And they should not be like the locks of their heads. In other words, our haircuts should not be in the style of their haircuts. That is our halacha in the Rambam, based on this Gemarah, which is in turn based on the Torah that says "V'lo telchu b'chukot hagoy." The Rambam then goes on to say, "V'lo yegaleach min hatzadin." You should not shave. You should not shave the sides. Stadin. You should not shave the sides. V'yaniach haseyah be'emtza, and leave the hair in the middle. Right, so you've shaved the sides and you leave the hair in the middle. What would we call that today?
Mohawk.
We'd call that a mohawk, yeah. So we think that, all those guys, those punk fellows. Right, that's the first time I saw a mohawk. Was it?
Which is why my grandson is told off by his yeshiva teachers when he goes back after the holidays.
Yes, because do you remember when the first mohawk that I remember was Johnny Rotten. Of the Sex Pistols in the I think in the early 70s. Could be wrong about that, the timing, but I've never seen anybody that looked like that before, and I certainly would not have done that myself. But I thought, well, that's pretty modern. Clearly not. The Rambam speaks about it. The Rambam says don't have a mohawk, right? Why not? Because that's what they do. Okay, and so don't shave the sides and leave the hair in the middle. Kamo shehein osin, like they do. V'zeh hanikra beloriot, and that is what's called beloriot, and that is the word beloriot that we have in our Gemarah. And he then goes on to say, then you don't shave the hair off your face. In other words, a Jewish man should have a beard. Ozen la ozen, from ear to ear. Don't shave your beard and have a ponytail, basically, at the back. That's what they did. Why? That's what they did. And we're not meant to do what they did. Okay, and then he goes on to other things. So
I think you say, well, you once told us that's where the word galach comes from, the priest.
Correct. A galach in Yiddish is a priest.
Yeah.
Why? Because the priests, what do Jewish priests, i.e. rabbis, have?
Beards.
Beards. What do non-Jewish priests have?
Collars.
Dog collars.
No beard. No beards.
Yeah.
Right? They have shaved faces. So a vicar or a priest became known in Yiddish as a galach, meaning somebody who shaves. Lehit galeach means to shave. So the shaved one. In other words, the priest was the shaved one, as opposed to our priests, our rabbis, who were bearded. Yes, Hannah.
I was always under the impression, I don't know if I've changed it, that a Blorit is, does anybody remember the early pictures of Elvis Presley, where he's got his hair in the front, sort of comes
a quaff, I think. Didn't they call it a quaff?
Quiff.
That's right.
Yeah,
quiff, not a quaff. Do you know what a quaff is?
I was always under the, and I still have the impression, when I talk to people, that that's what they refer to as a blorit. Yeah,
I think that fits, because that's what he said. He said it's shaved at the sides, and it's vayaniach haseyah ba'emtza. A quiff, yeah. I think that's right.
I always see Elvis Presley as a blorit.
I think that is a blorit. I think you're absolutely right. So there we go.
Also, did you guys ever have a TV program, a bit irrelevant, but still, called The Last of the Mohicans?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because that's where I understood the haircut came from.
Yeah.
Because
yes,
The
me
Last
too.
of the Mohicans had one of those.
Me too. Yeah. Correct. Right, let's go back to the Gemarah. Oh, no, that's not the Gemarah. Where's the Gemarah gone? There it is. Right. Okay, so,
John,
yes, David.
If you're going to do this anyway, it's a very interesting note as to why the soldiers, Jewish soldiers...
Yeah, I'm coming to that.
Okay.
Coming to that. So, they grew their hair. These 400 kids of David's, or of his soldiers, grew their hair in a Gentile hairstyle. And let's see what else they did. We're over here on the left-hand side here. V'chulan yoshvin bikronot shel zahav. And they sat in carriages of gold. Carriages of gold. And there's a little note there, BL. What does that mean? BL, language. Here we are. Kronot, from the Greek charon, meaning a wagon or a carriage or a chariot. Yes, so there was a picture of a blorit there and a picture of a kronit, a carriage. Pretty, this is a Roman relief. Pretty similar to stuff that I don't know, that looks pretty similar to the stuff you'd see on a cowboy movie, right? From the
Wagon train.
Yeah, Bonanza and all that stuff, since we're talking about TV programs. Yeah,
Can I go back
Michael remembers Bonanza, don't you, Michael?
Yep.
So look, it's not changed.
Sorry, can I go back to the Gemarah?
Yes, of course.
Yeah,
I'm going to tell you why they were sitting in these golden carriages in a minute, but go on.
Okay, but I actually don't understand. It says, Rav Yehuda says that Rav says David had 400 children. And then it says, according to Rav Steinfeld, in his army. It doesn't say, if that's correct, It just didn't say that the children were David's at all. It just, we're talking about his army, and his army had 400 children.
Okay,
who were
let me
the sons
explain.
of beautiful women.
Art Scroll also tends to say what Julia just said. Art Scroll says Rav Yehuda, in the name of Rav, said David had 400 young men in his service, all of whom were the children of beautiful captives.
Right.
And
So
I tend to go along with who sported long locks. Go
Okay.
along with that because it's in the same vein. Lahavdil, lahavdil, Elefant Feavdalot. As rabbis consider their students as their children, David's soldiers, he considered them to be his children.
Okay, so let me explain. 2 weeks ago, we discussed this and we said, David, the Gemarah says, remember, you need to go back. What were we talking about before was that David took wives and concubines, okay? And we ended up saying he had 18 wives and a number of concubines. And then there was a whole discussion about what was the difference between a wife and a concubine, remember? And then part of this discussion was, look at the Gemarah, don't look at the translation, look at the Gemarah. The Gemarah says, Amarav Yehuda Amarav, Arba Meyot Yiladim Hayu Lo LeDavid, which means David had 400 children. Now, if you look in the translation now, you'll see that David had 400 children is in bold, which means that is the Gemarah's words. And Rav Steinsaltz has helped us out by saying in his army. And what he's done is he has assumed our discussion from 2 weeks ago, because we started by saying 400 children from David, that's a lot. And we actually, if you remember, we said, well, he only had 18 wives. So we worked out that that was quite a lot of kids for each wife. Remember now? We discussed this.
Yeah, yes, we did. But
then another opinion, Julia, was no, they weren't David's children. They were David's army's children, who then went into the army themselves. So when it says 400 children in his army, that is Rav Steinsaltz. And when it says in the Art Scroll in his service, that's also not in bold. That is the summation of the discussion, which originally thought that they were all David's children, but then figured out that that can't be the case. And therefore, they were all children of the soldiers who had captured the beautiful captive women. And the reason we're going through this will become clear soon. Well, maybe not that soon, but it will become clear eventually, right? So that's why it says in his army, because they're assuming we've had this discussion, which we had 2 weeks ago. Okay, so these are the children of David's soldiers who has sired these children through beautiful captive women, and these guys, these children, are now in the army, and they're allowed to grow their hair in a Goyish style, which is not allowed. Right? They were not allowed to do this, but here they were. And they sat in golden carriages. Let's do the next few words. Umahalchin barashei gyasot hayu. And they went at the head of the battalions. Gyasot, those the soldiers. What word do you see in there? Which is all in the news at the moment. Go on, Hannah. Gius, which means
inscription.
Yeah, enlistment into the army. So all the discussions now about the enlistment into the army, you'll see if you read it in the papers or you listen to it on the news, it's all about gius. Gius means enlistment. So if you are mitgayes, you enlist. So these guys went at the head of the troops. They were the vanguard. And look what else. V'heim hayu ba'alei egrofin. They were literally ba'alei egrofin. What do those words literally mean? What is an
They were
egrof?
good with their fist.
What's an egrof?
A fist.
A fist. Egrof is a fist. David Marks, where do we have that word egrof in the Torah?
Yeah, in Parshas Kisei, say if two men are fighting and a guy accidentally hits a woman with his fist, she's pregnant.
Yes, very good, excellent. I knew I could rely on you for that.
Shavi of Kisei, say.
So now you're showing off. Egrof is a fist, yes. So Ba'alei Egrof means somebody, as Hannah has said, somebody who's good with his fist. Nicely translated by Steinsaltz as the strong arm enforcers. Okay, what what do we call it? The Art Scroll call it the strong men. Okay, I like the strong arm enforcers better. They were the starkers. Now, why do you think that they were allowed to grow their hair when it's not allowed to grow your hair?
So they can
Mix.
mix. They can mix. They can mix with the other armies.
Yeah.
They can infiltrate.
All right, they could infiltrate. Okay, okay. Hold that thought, Hannah. Come back to you on that. Okay. Yes, they could infiltrate. That's true. It seems that the other enemy would be frightened of them. It seems that if the Jewish army had mercenaries, i.e. non-Jewish soldiers, that would be a sign of great strength, and the enemy would be frightened. So if you're fighting King David, and you know that King David's got a certain number of soldiers in his army, but you have a, Shaldag or Sayeret Matkal coming along of mercenaries, right? These elite unit. What's the question, Jackie?
I was asking, what do you call the people who take the oath of not cutting their hair and not drinking wine?
And Nazir, those are called the Nazir. Yeah.
But they grow long hair.
They do, but they grow it all over the place. They don't style it by having the mohawk, or theirs is just wild. That's actually the opposite of a blurit. The idea of a blurit is that it should be fashionable and it should be smart. Whether you think it's smart or not is another question. Whether I think it's smart is another question. But it's meant to be smart. The idea of the Nazir, you're quite right, doesn't cut his hair. But the idea of that is it's meant to be wild. It's the opposite, really, of a blurit.
Can I make another comment? I know I'm new here and I really shouldn't.
No, please do.
You're taking the number of 400 for David. Yet I consider numbers in the Torah to be sort of very loose. Because if you look at the Mufta for Last Day Sukkot, where Solomon consecrated the temple, he killed, and this is my forte because it's my business, he killed 200,000 sheep. And that is just impossible to be able to do. So we take 200,000 very, very literally.
Correct. I agree with you entirely. I have a massive problem with numbers in the Tanakh. I'm going to refer you. What am I going to refer him to, David Marks?
Ani Ma'amin.
Correct. I'm going to refer you, Jackie, to a book by Rabbi Joshua Berman called Ani Ma'amin. And the reason I asked David to say that is because David very kindly bought it for me as a gift. A fabulous book. Very difficult to read because it is very, very clever and very deep. And you have to read every chapter about 10 times before you get to the nub of it all. But one of the chapters, he deals very, very deeply with the idea of numbers in the Torah and why they are not to be taken literally. So it's a little bit heretical what you said. But I agree with you. I am quite a lot heretical on that particular point. Some would say on many others as well. But I agree with you. It doesn't necessarily mean 400. However, it's indicative of a big number. And what this is telling us is, doesn't matter whether it's 400 or 350 or 200, doesn't matter. What it was an elite, hardcore unit full of starke goyim, right? And we'll go back to Hannah's point now, that the reason that they were, one of the reasons they were allowed to grow their hair this way was actually they're not considered Jewish. Now, why were they not considered Jewish?
Because their mothers were the beautiful women captives.
Because their mothers were the beautiful captives. Now, that's a problem, Julia.
Yes.
Because the whole process of the captive, beautiful captive woman that we went through from Parshat Kiteitzei that we went through last time is, in effect, a conversion process. And the soldiers are not allowed to cohabit with this woman until she's gone through that entire process. So how do you get on saying that they weren't Jewish? Before you answer me, Julia, I'm going to ask Hannah that question because she was the one that first said they weren't Jewish. Why do you say they weren't Jewish, Hannah? Hello? You're muted, Hannah. Hannah, you're muted.
Because they were the daughters of the sons of the captive women, and secondly, afterwards, after I said that, I read on a little bit in Art Scroll, and Art Scroll says there is an opinion, that the soldiers can cohabit with a beautiful captive once before they start this process. And possibly these children were offspring of the cohabitation before they became thing. I also read here, and I don't know if you want me to go on to it.
No, stop there for the moment because you've already stole a bit of my thunder. So we'll stop there for a minute. But let's just go and talk about what Hannah said, and then we'll come to Julia in a sec. Okay, so what Hannah has just said is that there is an opinion that says all that stuff about in Kiteitzei, about having to bring her into the house and uncovering her hair and making her nails grow, and she's got to sit for a month and mourn her, all of that is only after the soldier has already had is allowed to have a relationship with her before he does all of that. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm not buying that. I'm not buying that. The Torah very clearly tells us that there is this process to go through. And the whole idea of this process is so that your lust as a soldier should be diminished by the time you get to this thing. And so that you should not, what's the word? You should not treat this woman in a dreadful manner, and that you should treat her well, etc. If you're allowed to rape the woman, that's what we're talking about. If you're allowed to rape the woman before you do this first, then the whole thing becomes pointless. Now, the reason, in my view, I could be wrong, but the reason, in my view, that there is this opinion, and it is only a minority opinion, but it is an opinion, that what Hannah has said, that they're allowed to do that, is for two reasons. And the main reason is because of this Gemarah, because somehow or other, you've got to make these children not Jewish. Now, if they are daughters of the captive woman and you've gone through the correct process, then they're Jewish because she's gone through a conversion process. Now, the other way they get round it, which is a little bit more acceptable, is that they go through this process and that the men, having gone, after they've gone through this process, they are allowed to force them to convert and then have relationships with them. But their conversion is not considered to be a full conversion because they are not doing it out of their own free will, and therefore the children are considered not Jewish. That's the other explanation, according to the opinion that says that what Hannah said is not allowed, that they're not allowed to have any relationships with them first. I'm very unhappy about the opinion. I'm not blaming Hannah. She's only reading what she's read in the Art Scroll. I'm very unhappy with the opinion that says they were allowed to violate these women before the kitetse process has taken place, because it doesn't make any sense for that to be allowed to do.
According to Rabbi Stein,
1 second. Julia, please. Yeah.
According to Rabbi Stein, so that's under his note, which actually I think we were going to cover anyway. He says two different alternatives. One was that the soldier was allowed to engage in sexual intercourse with a woman in wartime, and then if he decided to marry her, she would go through the conversion. If she decided to convert to Judaism, they could marry. That's her decision. And then he says, according to other authorities, sexual intercourse with a captive was prohibited, but the soldier had the right to convert his captive and marry her. In other words, it's not her decision. You're talking about the duress, which you've just mentioned. It's his decision. So either way, actually.
So those are the two sides that we've really just gone through, isn't it? One is allowed to basically rape her, and secondly, he's allowed to force convert her. Either way, it's not a proper conversion, and the point is the children then are not Jewish, and that was the result that we were trying to get to.
No, because he said if he rapes her and then she decides to convert, that's what he says. If she, when the period is over, if she decided to convert, that is her choice. The second alternative is a forced conversion. So he rapes her and then she can decide, or he doesn't rape her, but he forces her to convert.
Yeah.
It doesn't work well for women either way. Right.
So the first one, he rapes her. What if she doesn't decide to convert? Then the kid's not Jewish.
Yeah.
Right. So either way, we've got non-Jewish children. These 400 children were not Jewish, either because they were the result of a rape and the woman decided not to convert, or they were as a forced conversion, which doesn't really work. Yes, Michael.
No, you've got the rape and she does decide to convert.
Then that's not one of these 400 children.
Well, that's not what it, well, I don't know. I mean, he gives those as alternatives. My other point, which I was going to raise originally, was I thought at one point the lineage of Judaism came through the man. When did that start and finish?
Okay, that's a good question. Even at this point, it was patrilineal, but not in this situation with the Yafat Torah. That was an exception. Yes, Michael.
Right. Firstly, if the guy rapes the captive before she converts, the baby's still going to be born after the conversion. So the baby's born once the conversion has taken place. And even if that wasn't the case, how do you know that the baby was born before or after? Because we're only talking about 1 month here, and the baby takes 9 months to be born. So how do you know exactly when that took place?
Okay, so the first question, the first part of your question, we're talking about a situation where she didn't convert. Remember, she has a choice. Once she's been raped, according to the Steinsaltz over here, have a look over here on the right-hand side of the page. According to some authorities, a soldier was allowed to engage in sexual intercourse with such a woman in wartime. Afterwards, if he desired to marry her, she had to shave her head, let her nails grow, blah, 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 blah. When that period was over, if she decided to convert to Judaism, they could marry. What if she didn't? She's still pregnant, whether she, she's going to have a baby.
Then the baby obviously isn't Jewish under those
circumstances. Correct. That's right. That's what we're talking about.
Right. And
now, the second part of your question, which is if she does go through that conversion process, how do we know when the baby was conceived? And really the question is this: a baby conceived to a non-Jewish woman who then converts before the baby is born, what is the status of that Jewish child? So let's say we don't know that. What you're telling me is it could be a month either way. We might not know. Let's say the conversion took place a month before the baby was born, right? We see that sometimes in weddings, don't you? The bride is very heavily pregnant and they want to be married by the time the baby's born. So the baby's not a bastard. I remember when my daughter Rena is a ketubah artist. Some of you may know that, and she was once asked to do a 10th anniversary ketubah for somebody. They'd never had a ketubah because they weren't married in a Jewish manner, and they decided that for their 10th anniversary they would commission Rena to paint a ketubah for them. And she personalizes these things and she asked them, what would you like on it and blah, blah, blah. And she said, we'd like our wedding, a depiction of our wedding picture. So in her wedding picture, this girl is very, very heavily pregnant. So Rena didn't want to put in, so she sort of did the picture of the wedding picture, but without the bump. Right. And when she presented it, for approval, no, she says, I want the bump in. She had to go and alter it back to have the bump in. So let's have the situation, Michael, where we know that the baby was conceived with a non-Jewish woman. The conversion takes place before the birth. What's the status of the child that's born? Jewish or not Jewish?
Not Jewish.
Not Jewish.
Jewish.
I'd go with Jewish, actually.
Okay. Hands up for Jewish.
I'd also go with Jewish.
Hands up for Jewish. Johnny?
I'm not sure that I didn't hear the question properly.
Okay, I'll ask you the question again. A man has a relationship with a non-Jewish woman and makes her pregnant.
Not Jewish.
A non-Jewish woman.
Yeah,
She converts a month before the baby is born. Is the baby Jewish or non-Jewish?
I go Jewish.
Not
Okay.
Jewish.
Hands up for Jewish.
I'm changing.
Okay. Yes. All right. So you're on your own, David. Why do you say non-Jewish?
I say non-Jewish.
Oh, okay. You're not on your own. I'll come to David first. Why, David? Why non-Jewish?
Time of conception.
Time of conception. Jackie, why non-Jewish?
Like a surrogate mother.
Mm.
Okay. What is the halacha with a child who is the product of a in vitro fertilization, a test tube baby of a non-Jewish egg? Doesn't matter about the sperm. A non-Jewish egg, which is then implanted into a Jewish mother as a surrogate mother, and that mother gives birth. Who is the mother of that child?
The only information I'm aware of that I know is that if you're in an adoptive case, if you adopt a child at birth, more or less at birth or as a baby, the person who's considered the mother is the person who raises the child. And working on that principle, yeah, I would say that it's Jewish.
Okay, right. So first of all, there's no such concept in Jewish law of adoption. Doesn't exist. In Jewish law, there's no such thing as adoption. So we'll just put that to the side for a minute. That's not to say that there is and the reason that is problematic, by the way, and we will come to that in a few weeks' time, maybe next week even, in the Gemarah, is when we talk about the laws of yichud. The laws of yichud are the laws of being secluded with another person of the opposite gender without anybody else there. It's a big problem in adoptive families because there's no concept of halachic law in adoption. So if a family adopt a girl, let's say, once that girl gets to a certain age, there is a potential problem of yichud with her adoptive father, because the halakha does not recognize adoption as fatherhood. So we'll just put that to the side because we'll end up getting sidetracked. Let's go back to my question earlier on. A non-Jewish egg implanted into a Jewish woman, the baby is born, irrelevant of who raises the child. Who is the mother? Is it the genetic mother whose egg it was, or is it the birth mother who gave birth to the child?
I think it might be the birth mother, because you have to sign over. You have to enter into legal documents once you've had a surrogate baby, that the natural mother isn't automatically the mother until the documentation's been completed.
Okay, so Julia's coming with her legal hat on and saying it's a legal transaction. Okay, we don't have a legal transaction here. We just have
it recently. I don't know.
Whoa, one at a time. Jackie first, please.
Luckily, the baby won't be Jewish. We have it in London with the Beth Din. We're having lots of problems with people having surrogate babies, and they can't, and they won't. The Beth Din will not allow the baby to become automatically 100% kosher.
Okay, now I'm going to dissect your comments there, Jackie, because no, not yet. No, I want to take it one at a time. One at a time, Hannah, one at a time. I'm going to dissect Jackie's comments. Jackie said that the London Beth Din do not accept these children of surrogate mothers as being 100% Jewish. Now, I'm going to tell you what the halacha is, okay? And then we can discuss how the London Beth Din applies that halacha. There is a very, very fierce machloket amongst the poskim as to who is the mother, whether it is the birth mother or the genetic mother. The mainstream halacha, the most of the poskim, including the big boys, Rav Bleich and Rav Tendler and Rav Sternbuch, and all of the big boys, the primary halacha is that the mother is the one who gives birth to the child. And therefore, in most Batei Din in the world, it would be accepted as a Jewish child. Now, Jackie, I'm sure, is right that the London Beth Din will not accept the child as 100% Jewish. The London Beth Din would have to accept that child as 100% Jewish if that child went along to, for example, Rav Bleich and brought a psak from Rav Bleich to the London Beth Din. Now, the type of children who are born to surrogate mothers in London are not particularly familiar with Rav Bleich, and so they rely on the London Beth Din. The London Beth Din works on the basis of covering every single option. So what they insist on is what is called Geirut Lechumra. They insist on those children undergoing a sort of conversion process, Lechumra, meaning as a stringency. But halachically, strictly halachically, the majority of poskim would say that is not required. London, of course, and Manchester even more so, will always go for a chumrah if there is one, and that is the scenario. So the halacha, it's not 100% agreed, but the majority of poskim say that the birth mother is the mother. Now, it's relevant in not just in Jewish status. It's relevant in terms of kibud av va'ein. What is a person who is obliged to honor? It's relevant for Yerusha, for inheritance law, and the poskim actually say that we should consider lechumra that both are the mothers, that this child has two halachic mothers. It's a fascinating subject. This it's something that gone into in very great detail over many, many, many years, and more than 20 years. So there are very few poskim that say it is only the genetic mother who's the mother, almost none. There are many poskim who say it's the birth mother, and there are many poskim who say it's both, but they almost all say it's the birth mother. So that deals with the London based-in. So you're right, Jackie, but you've got to know the nuance to it of how they operate. I'm sure you know how they operate in your business. They must give you all sorts of stuff. Right, Hannah, you wanted to say something.
I was just taking exception at the question where it doesn't matter who raises the child, because one of the basic tenets is that you transmit your Judaism to your children. If the child's not right, I mean, here, as far as I know, people who convert, have to undertake afterwards to maintain an observant household. So how can you say it doesn't matter whether who raised?
You misunderstood. Halachically, as to the Jewish status, it doesn't matter who raises them. For example, a couple, and this has happened many, many, many times, a Jewish couple adopts at birth a non-Jewish child and fails to put that child through a conversion process, either pre or post bat mitzvah, and that child comes to get married, and this has happened over and over again, that child cannot marry until he converts. That child is not Jewish. He can have gone to the Jewish school, he can have gone to yeshiva, he can have gone to Ponovich, I don't care where he's gone. If he's born a non-Jewish child, raised by a Jewish family, does not help his Jewish status. Of course, it may make his conversion process a bit easier, to say the least, if he's gone through all of that stuff and he knows what he's doing, etc. There's a famous story, I don't know if it's even true, but it's a famous story of, and I've heard it said, it probably isn't true because I've heard it said of various different places, that there was a yeshiva bocher who was like the top bocher in yeshiva, and he'd been there for years and years and years, top bocher, and suddenly somehow or other it turns out that he was adopted as a kid and nobody knew, and he never went through a process, nobody ever told him that he was adopted, and he goes into the Rosh Yeshiva. The Rosh Yeshiva calls him in and says, we've found out actually, that you're not Jewish. We'll need to do, a conversion process. It won't, 5-minute job, you're a fabulous bocher, you know everything. All you need to do is to have a tofas dam bris. You've already had a bris. You have to have a tiny little procedure. You have to go in the mikveh and you have to say, I accept the Torah. We'll do it in 5 minutes. No, not a problem. So don't worry. And this bocher says, oh, all right. Takes his capel off, puts it on the table and says, no, I'm off. I'm not Jewish. I'm not Jewish. And it's an apocryphal story. I don't know if it really happened. But the fact is, Hannah, that it doesn't, when I said it doesn't matter who raises him, as far as Jewish status is concerned, it doesn't matter who raises him because there's no concept of adoption in Jewish law. So you can be adopted by, the chief rabbi and his wife and be brought up in their home. But if you were born to a non-Jewish woman and you didn't go through Gerus, you remain non-Jewish. Okay. We're out of time.
What do you think of our poll?
We didn't get anywhere near what I thought we'd get to, as usual. But anyway, that's left you with the taster for next week. Yes, David.
Yeah, can I just add that there are some giant modern halachic opinions that support the London based-in of Rav Ovadia Yosef, Rav Aaron Lichtenstein amongst them.
Okay. Rav Ovadia Yosef, I don't say this. No, I'm not going to say the word I said. I was going to say I dismiss. I don't mean that in any way. I put to the side because the London based-in are not Sephardim, and therefore they can't rely on a Sephardi posek. I'd be interested in what Rav Lichtenstein paskins. Rav Lichtenstein was not a posek.
I think he was a Rosh Yeshiva.
have a look at all the major poskim, Rav Moshe, Rav Tendler, Rav Bleich. I'll send you a load of references if you want. I've got them all listed. But Gerus L'Chumra is not an unusual situation, by the way. Many of here in Israel, there was a massive furore with the Ethiopians because they were made to go, and many of them were made to go through Gerus L'Chumra, and it was, they felt very.
It's very demeaning,
they felt demeaned by it, and they felt discriminated by it. Yes, Julia.
What was the result of our poll? We had everybody except David thought that the child who was conceived before the mother converted was going to be Jewish. Was
the
that
answer
right
is the
or wrong?
baby is Jewish. No, it's Jewish because the baby was born to a Jewish mother. It's what
Right.
it's the status of the mother at birth. A Jewish child is a child born to a Jewish mother, and when that child was born, he was born to a Jewish mother. He might have been conceived. He might have been conceived to a non-Jewish mother, but he was born to a Jewish mother. It may well be, by the way, that no Beis Din would have converted her 1 month before the birth and would have made her wait till after the birth and then converted the child. I don't know. That's technicality, but the pure fact is that a child born to a Jewish mother is Jewish.
So to go back, we need to understand why they're allowed to have long hair.
Right. So they're allowed. Correct. That was where we started from here. We'll go back next week and discuss why they were allowed long hair. The answer is, as Hannah said about half an hour ago, is that they're not Jewish. And all that shenanigans about being able to have relations with the woman beforehand is all in order to make these children not Jewish. And we'll see when we get on to the next piece of Gemarah, which is the X-rated stuff, the story. I'll give you a little heads up, but if you don't want a spoiler, don't read on. It's the story of Amnon and Tamar. Those of you who have your standard UK Jewish education will have no idea what I'm talking about because it's in Tanakh and we weren't taught any. Those of you who've learned Tanakh will probably know the story. But it's a very saucy story and it gets even more X-rated in the Gemarah. So that is for next week. Don't read on if you don't want a spoiler. And we, please God, will meet next week at the same time. Yes, Hannah.
This is again a red herring of mine. Can you just tell us a little bit about what the problem was with the Ethiopians?
The problem that was considered to be a problem was that there was their Masorah, their traditions were very different to our, I suppose we'd call them Western traditions. We were all from the tribe of Yehuda or Binyamin, were we not? They're from the tribe of possibly Dan. And their Masorah was thought to be suspect. And therefore, in order to bring them, as it were, back into the fold of Yehudim, as opposed to Am Yisrael, the authorities, the chief rabbinate here in Israel, were not happy and wanted to do Gerut L'Chumra. It was a massive political hot potato. If you want to hear full chapter and verse from it, then we should ask Danny Limor, who of course was the commander of the Mossad group that brought the Ethiopians over in the 1980s. Those of you who've seen the Red Sea diving resort will know that. He has a lot to say about it, and maybe we'll get him to give us a chat about that at some point to our group. It would be very interesting.
Yeah.
Can I ask also one question briefly? It says David had 400 children and they became the shock troops for the Israeli army. What about the girls? There must have been as many girls as boys. Were they shock troops as well, or haven't they been counted?
No, they're not counted, Michael.
So you're talking you're talking about
you know,
800 children then, rather than the 400.
there is a halacha that says lifnei iver lo sitein michshol. Before a blind person, don't
put
put a
an
stumbling block.
obstacle.
Don't lead me into saying things which will get me into trouble, Michael. I'm not buying it.
I'll ask you in shul tomorrow morning.
I might answer you in shul tomorrow morning, but not whilst I'm still recording.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thanks very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Johnny.
Everybody. Bye.
Bye.